We do want to start, though, with breaking news from overnight. Majority of abortions in Texas are now banned after the Supreme Court did not rule on an emergency appeal to keep a new law from taking effect.
The law known as Senate Bill 8 prohibits abortions after 6 weeks. It also allows people to sue abortion providers and people who help others get them. These lawsuits could win plaintiffs up to $10,000 with, of course, added attorney fees. Even before the law took effect, Texas abortion clinics had been turning patients away. Since mid-August, 11 Planned Parenthood clinics were not scheduling patients after September 1st.
Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos, who joins us to help break down this decision. So first of all, Danny, what does this mean for Roe v. Wade? Does this chip away at it at all?
It doesn't mean that Roe v. Wade is overturned. It doesn't necessarily even chip away at Roe v. Wade yet. This is a complicated battle of injunctive relief and asking courts to stay things before they go forward. But the key at this stage is about preserving the status quo until the ultimate case can be decided. In fact, technically an injunction could still be issued by a court, or including the Supreme Court. But all this means is that the law has been allowed to go into effect, which does surprise me, because if you think about what the status quo was before the law, it was a scheme consistent with Roe v. Wade. The law as it exists now is not really consistent with Roe v. Wade. So it was a surprise to me that the Supreme Court didn't decide to weigh in and at least hit the pause button until the case could be decided.
Danny, we want to talk more about the Supreme Court and their role here. But first, let's talk about what this means. I mentioned that the law essentially lets anyone sue abortion providers or people who helped someone get an abortion. Can you break down how that works? I mean, does it really mean anyone?
This law is either brilliant or diabolical, depending on which side of the debate you're on, because its proponents have effectively tried to insulate it from challenge. It's not the government, the state government, that's enforcing the law. Instead, like Wyatt Earp, they have deputized citizens to file private lawsuits against anyone, not just who conducts an abortion or performs an abortion, but aids, abets, assists in an abortion, hitting them where it can really devastate them, their pocketbook. And so the financial disincentive now is clear. Perform an abortion at your own financial risk. And what citizen wouldn't want, who's not, he doesn't even have to be involved in the case or know the abortion provider, have any relationship. They can just march into court and basically get a free $10,000 if they file suit. Who wouldn't want to get involved in that? I mean, well, a lot of people, but there are a lot of people that would want to file suit and make some fast money.
So, Danny, at this point, do we know what is the next major legal battle over abortion in the Supreme Court?
There's going to be a lot of procedural battles going forward in the immediate future. The Supreme Court could technically still issue an injunction, but because they declined to act, the law goes into effect for now. So we are probably months, maybe even years away from the Supreme Court issuing a final decision when this case gets before them and they consider it properly. But what's controversial here is that this is part of what's been called the shadow docket, the Supreme Court issuing essentially opinions or decisions on cases without a reasoned, 100-page explanation of why they arrived at that decision, which kind of runs counter to the vision we all have of the Supreme Court, which is they decide cases, but at least they tell us how they arrived there.
Right. Danny Savalos, thank you so much for walking us through this breaking news this morning. We also have other breaking news this morning. A search and rescue mission is underway off San Diego after a Navy helicopter crashed in the Pacific. 6 service members were on board. 1 crew member has been rescued, but their condition is unknown at this time, and the search continues for the remaining 5.
Now to the East Coast, where the debate over mask mandates is heating up in Pennsylvania. Governor Tom Wolf announced a statewide mask mandate for school kids will start next week. He's the latest state leader to enforce the strict policy, joining New York and New Jersey. But the decision is facing intense pushback from some parents and school boards, with several counties choosing to create optional mask environments instead. NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbilla joins us now from outside Council Rock North High School with more. So, Heidi, you've heard from several parents about this decision. How are they feeling about the mask mandate?
Yeah, Joe, a lot of parents here were expecting to send their children back to school with a mask optional policy. But here's one big thing to remember. Sometimes stuff changes. From mid-July to the end of August, this state has seen a 300% spike in COVID cases among children aged 0 to 17. More than 5,000 have tested positive. So this context now of sending these kids back into the buildings here, it's getting hot between parents. Let me read to you, Joe, first of all, from an op-ed that came out this morning from a mother who is beside herself about the fact that these kids are still not wearing masks. She said this to the council board here. She said, "For your sake, I hope tomorrow and every day after that is not the day that one of our district students succumbs to this virus, because whatever happens tomorrow is on you." And on the other side, Joe, are parents who are equally hot about making sure that their children have the choice not to wear masks. Here's what they say.
I'm not wearing a mask. I don't care what your administration says. Children are not wearing masks. You can't constrict my breathing anymore. I'm not having it.
My kids will not participate in this political science social experiment. Thank you.
We are just asking for the same respect that we do not have to mask our child and are not forced to wear one. We are not forcing your child to take off their mask, and by the same token, we don't want you to force our children to put on a mask.
So with this policy now taking effect statewide next week, the question is, how are principals and educators at schools like Council Rock going to enforce this with parents acting like that and telling their children not to abide?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I mean, does the Council Rock School Board, where you are, plan on revisiting its decision to make masks optional?
Joe, they do have a previously planned meeting tonight after they voted last week on masks optional. It was a pretty close vote, 5-4. But again, this order really supersedes anything that the school board voted on. And the state health secretary who spoke yesterday said, look, we are not asking for a permanent policy here. We know we can get these children vaccinated within the next couple of months. Why can't we do this? We've seen what the experiment was in the South and what the results of that were. We have the benefit of seeing that already 90,000 children in these southern states that had mask optional policies had to quarantine. And you parents who are now complaining are the same parents who were complaining about virtual school being psychologically damaging to your children. So which is it? Would you rather have them in virtual school, which is what you said was psychologically damaging last year, or in masks in person this year? Because you cannot have both, Joe.
So, Heidi, could this debate extend past the start of this school year? Are there any legal challenges in the works to address the optional mask guidance?
There are legal challenges flying all around us, okay? Last week, we had the American Civil Liberties Union filing in South Carolina. We have parents in all kinds of states filing lawsuits. And indeed, here, the school board now has a federal case filed against it by parents who want the masks. So this will certainly stretch on, given that the parents who don't want the masks have seemed to, at least temporarily, lost the battle here. However, again, like I said, the question is, how are principals now going to enforce this, and what is the next level of this controversy if kids start coming into school and refusing to wear masks, Joe?
All right, Heidi Presbella, thanks for your reporting. Thank you.
Let's bring in Dr. Bob Lahita. He's a professor at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine and the director of the Institute for Autoimmune and Rheumatic Diseases at St. Joseph's Health. Dr. Lahita, always great to have you. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, of course, the other big conversation with kids in school besides masks is when they will be vaccinated. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb is saying that kids 5 to 11 could be eligible for the Pfizer vaccine this winter. What do you think of that timing? Do you think it's realistic, and will it help with kids in school?
Well, it's an accelerated pathway. And I think that what you're hearing about mandated mask wearing is because the Northeast, which has largely been untouched by the surge of the Delta virus in many respects, is very concerned. It's concerning to see that children are being infected over and over in other parts of the country, and many of them winding up in the intensive care unit. So the 5 to 11 age group they should be submitting their application by October. And then the 12 to 15 group is already getting emergency use injections of the vaccine. And of course, much of this, Savannah, depends on the parents. The parents don't want the vaccine. The kids are not going to be allowed to get it.
Dr. Bob, let's maybe talk about adults here. A new Axios poll shows vaccine hesitancy is declining a little bit. 72% of adults are vaccinated. 8% say they're likely to get the vaccine, according to the poll. 20% say it's unlikely they'll get the vaccine. That's down from 23% just 2 weeks ago. So what do you think is driving this decline in vaccine hesitancy? Do you think it's possible to still reach some of those folks in that 20%?
I think it's still possible. They're going to see the light when people around them start succumbing to the infection. Now, the interesting thing is that we're still not at herd immunity, but we're above 70%, which is really, really terrific. And I think the mandates from some of our larger cities are driving the rush to get vaccinated. Mandates in school systems, mandates among fire and police, et cetera. There's a lot of pushback, but that's what's causing the increase in vaccinations.
Now, Dr. Lahita, while we're battling the Delta variant here in the U.S., waiting on other people to get vaccinated, doctors in South Africa have discovered a new variant. So tell us, just how infectious is this new strain? Is it something we need to worry about here in the U.S.?
We worry about these new strains all the time. The strain is called C12. This strain has not been proven to be the same as the Delta right now. We don't know what the infectivity of it is, whether it's more infective than the Delta. I find anything to be more infective than the Delta to be significantly alarming. But we don't know. We don't know if it's more transmissible either. This variant has appeared on the screen. And again, variants are the result of unvaccinated people being infected.
All right. Dr. Bob Lahita, as always, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for your expertise this morning.
Thanks, Savannah. Thanks, Joe.
Ida is now a tropical depression, dumping rain on the Northeast, but the impact of this historic storm will be felt along the Gulf Coast in the weeks and months to come. The death toll from Ida is now up to 6 in the South after 2 electrical workers in Alabama were killed while trying to repair damage to the state's power grid. In Louisiana, leaders say the island of Grand Isle is now uninhabitable. The island is close to where Ida made landfall Sunday. The Jefferson Parish president says 100% of all structures are damaged, and the only known people who now remain on the island are the mayor, police chief, and first responders. Over in St. Charles Parish near New Orleans, people are now being told they could be without power for at least a month. An overnight curfew is now in place. The governor of Louisiana has a message for people who evacuated and want to come back.
The schools are not open, the businesses are not open, the hospitals are slammed. There's not water in your home, and there's not going to be electricity.
NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joins us now from New Orleans, a city that is still in the dark, literally as the sun is just rising and as the power is still out there. Ellison, good morning. So the city's also having issues with its water supply, and it actually could feel like 100 degrees in some parts of Louisiana today. How are people handling that without power, without clean water in some places? And when could people there in New Orleans get some kind of relief?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly hot. Just to give you a sense of how dark things are in this city, we're standing on Bourbon Street, and the sun has started to come up a little bit. That's giving us some light, but it's pretty much entirely dark down here. If we walk across the street this way, you can see it just keeps going. There's no lights down in this direction. There are no lights behind us. Just everywhere you look here, it really is just pitch black. The energy company, they say that they have identified 2 potential ways to get some power back in the city starting tonight. They say they actually saw the first light somewhere this morning in the eastern side of the city. We've asked for specific details on location there. We haven't heard exactly where that took place, but what they're considering is they're potentially going to kind of salvage the power lines that weren't severely damaged in New Orleans and either make New Orleans its own little island of an energy grid, or their preferred option is to take those lines and tie it to the larger main energy grid and get them some sort of power back in this area, because when you don't have power, it is a massive ripple effect. You mentioned the water, Savannah. When the power goes out, water pressure drops pretty dramatically. And by the way, you can see just behind me a little here, this is some of the crews. We've seen a few of the electric companies, energy crews coming out this morning to get to work kind of at the first bit of light. But when the power goes out, water, it loses the pressure. So then you end up being under a boil advisory where if you have water, you aren't able to drink it, you aren't able to consume it. And then when pressure gets really low, some people are just entirely out of water. So you have people in this city incredibly hot, incredibly overheated, and then also unable to drink water or in many cases, here's another electric company coming by here, which that is a really big positive sign for this city because this is day 4 of no power. But all this kind of leads to maybe there will be more light soon, and also maybe people will be able to actually use their water, get water pressure back, and actually have stuff to drink. Savannah?
I mean, Allison, no water, no power, and for days in heat like that, I mean, how are New Orleans residents doing right now? What kind of help are they getting?
You know, it's difficult because in situations like this, usually you'll have some sort of shelter or a cooling station somewhere where people can go, but the entire city is out of power, so there's really not a lot of options for people to go get help. And if they hear of some place, a lot of people have told us it's really difficult to figure out where they might get help because for many people, their phones are entirely dead now. They don't have any gas in their cars, so there is no way for them to charge it to figure out information about where they can go and get some help. Listen to what one person told us when we were at a food distribution charging station center just yesterday.
In this area, I think everything basically is across the river. I haven't heard, I heard word of mouth. Everybody's cell phones, as far as internet access and stuff, is low.
My father said he's on dialysis, so I got to find somewhere to get his dialysis treatment. It's miserable, and basically I'm just dealing with it. The only thing I'm concerned about is my dad.
For cooling stations to give people an option to get a little bit cool for just a few minutes even. The city has put buses that normally obviously operate like regular buses out in the city. They've parked those outside of some distribution centers and people can just go on the buses and sit. But again, it's really difficult for people to find those options because many people do not have any sort of internet access or phone access. Savannah?
Allison Barber coming to us from a dark and very hot New Orleans, a city also under a curfew right now. Ellison, thank you so much for your reporting. Stay safe.
NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns is watching the severe weather in the Northeast from Ida.
Hey, Bill, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's going to be a dangerous day in New England. I mean, we have a chance to lose more lives in the Northeast today than we did when the storm made landfall, which is kind of mind-boggling, but it's going to be that dangerous later. So let's first just talk about and stick with New Orleans area and Louisiana. It's incredible that, yesterday morning at this time, there was over 1 million people without power. Now it's 980,000. Like, not many people got power back on. Mississippi, on the other hand, peaked at 120,000 people without power, and now they're down to 20,000. So Mississippi's doing a little better, but the winds weren't as strong there. But look how hot it's going to be for all the people in southeast Louisiana today. Once again, no relief in sight. Heat advisories are up. Just day after day, it just takes its toll, especially at night when people are trying to sleep. So what's left of this storm? It's going to be incredible, the amount of rain going into the areas of Pennsylvania and into New England later on this evening. It's already raining. The storm is slowly moving in, and it's actually going to merge with another storm, and that's what's going to produce these epic rainfall rates. 63 million people are included. We already have flash flood warnings near Philadelphia, also Pittsburgh, a couple in areas of West Virginia, and that's going to expand. It's pretty rare that we get a high risk of flash flooding covering this huge area in pink there, 19 million people. And as we were advertising yesterday, these rainfall totals, it's just widespread, 3 to 5 inches. Someone's going to get 8 to 10 inches of rain. And on top of that, guys, we have a chance of tornadoes from D.C. to Philadelphia and southwards down into areas of New Jersey. So tornadoes this evening and life-threatening flooding. So we're not done.
All right, Bill Cairns, thank you so much. We'll see you in a little bit. Now to more extreme weather and potentially dangerous conditions. Strong winds are pushing the Caldor fire closer to Lake Tahoe as thousands are forced to flee their homes in California and Nevada. More than 50,000 people are under mandatory evacuation, with more than 30,000 structures in the line of danger. Firefighters are struggling to contain the disaster and calling it unprecedented.
What we're experiencing is not normal. I hope it's not the new normal.
The fire has already destroyed nearly 200,000 acres. Now there are more strong winds and high temperatures forecast, and red flag warnings are in effect until late tonight.